Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, somebody I talked to back in February 2024. His name is Ken Silva. Last name is spelled Silva. And he's posted so many articles. I was trying to catch up with him this morning. But he's posted so many articles about the attempted assassination of Trump at his site at Headline USA, which I'll post links to that. And also, he posts a lot on Twitter, which I'm on often. So I just keep following his stuff. So I asked him to come on the show and share his research. But we talked in February with BX about the 764 pedophile cult and the Order of Nine Angles. And then I think we were on Tower Gang Jose with Jose Gallison. We talked with him and me and BX as well. But he's done some great research and a lot of questions and a lot of curious things about the situation. We were talking in the pre-show, like the dust is still settling. There's not a lot of clear information, and it's kind of like a rolling investigation. And I think his articles reflect that. This kind of trying to put the pieces together of what really happened on July 13th, and just kind of the strange behavior maybe of the people in DC, like not really wanting to get to the bottom of it or just settling it and moving forward. But he can talk more about that. So Ken Silva, welcome back to the show.
Oh, yeah. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, I think I've written probably over 40 articles on the Trump shooting since it happened. And I'm still struggling to understand everything and separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And yeah, hopefully we can get through this together and see what we know and maybe debunk a few things along the way.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. And there's other people doing the research that are, we were talking in the pre-show, I'm not going to name names, but just the same process is taking place. The sound of the bullets, the who was what and where, what shots happened. And there's clearly some disinfo going on too, because I've seen doctored video and the corporate media is blown. Like, did this really ever happen? So I saw somebody on the left, like a third of the people think it was fake. I actually was on a show with a guy who thinks that it was a big stage event. So it's pretty crazy. It's only been 3 weeks out, but there's some things that are for sure and some that are up left to speculation or inquiry, still further inquiry, right? Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And just to give your viewers a little, understanding of, the angle I'm taking on my reporting, I've mostly confine my reporting to quote unquote like official sources. So, the congressional investigations, I've listened to all 3 hearings. I think they're about 5 hours apiece. Any testimony from people who are at the event, all that's fair game to me. The stuff I've tried to stay away from.
Go ahead.
Is the audio analysis and maybe people trying to break down videos and seeing, was there a black speck on top of the water tower? Was that another shooter? That kind of stuff I try to stay away from just because I don't have any kind of scientific background. I'm not an expert in acoustics or ballistics. I wasn't a counter sniper or anything. So I'm not saying there isn't validity to that line of investigation, but my goal is to try to not make mistakes and try to just get at least the quote unquote official evidence or the government's official narrative. And then maybe in the future, when things are more, when there's more evidence for certain things, I'd be happy to dig into it when it's merited.
But would you agree that there was clearly some type of Secret Service ineptitude, either intentional or negligence? Like, I'm not, like you said, you're not a sniper. I wasn't in the military, but I would say that the places to check out in that place was that building. I think it's called the something glass building or something like that building, and the water tower would be obvious vantage points for somebody. Wouldn't you agree that that's the letdown and that Cheadle's kind of excuses? She came up with, note in your articles, she came up with 2 lame excuses, right? It wasn't one. It was that the roof was too steep and it was too hot, right?
That's right. And I'm open to the possibility that the Secret Service tried to get Trump killed. Like, let's not be mistaken. I'm not saying like, I'm taking a total narrow view on this. I'm open to the 2-shooter possibility. And yeah, The official story is there were no law enforcement station on the water tower. How could that even be possible? Like anybody, even us, can see that you'd want to have somebody on the highest point that has advantage of the whole site. Was the Secret Service is trying to say that, oh, our area of responsibility was just the specific 100-yard radius around Trump. That was our, perimeter, and the locals were responsible for things outside of that. Whether or not that's typical Secret Service protocol, I'm pretty sure it's not. I'm pretty sure that breaks protocol. And obviously there wasn't anybody stationed on the rooftop where Crooks allegedly fired at Trump from. And you mentioned that there's been two excuses. The Secret Service former director initially said that the roof was so slanted she didn't want to put agents up there. And that was obviously total BS. I mean, everybody widely mocked her for that. The second excuse, and now we're already jumping right into the weeds with possible disinformation. So a Secret Service whistleblower told Senator Josh Hawley that the locals were supposed to be on the roof, but it was too hot, so they decided to go inside the building instead on that second floor that would have had somewhat of a vantage point of Crooks. But the locals are actually disputing that, saying, no, it was our plan the whole time to be stationed inside the building. And it looks to me as though maybe the Secret Service is sending a quote-unquote whistleblower to try to just pin more of the blame on the locals, saying oh, they couldn't take the heat, so they went inside, when in fact, no, the operations plan originally always had them inside the building. So yeah, there's just, even among so-called whistleblower information, it's hard to tell what's really going on.
Right, but they the Secret Service shifted blame to the local police, right? When it's really their responsibility. Is that something that's correct?
Yeah, and I mean, it's their responsibility to protect the president, point blank. So, the locals can provide assistance in certain areas, but at the end of the day, the buck has to stop somewhere, and that's got to be the Secret Service. Otherwise, if it was the locals' responsibility, then why even have the Secret Service at all?
Right, good point. I mean, I think you wrote in one of your articles I read this morning was that the Secret Service said they were tasked with doing, road work or something, making sure the audit cars was kept on, on the right track. So there's an issue, and there's also an issue, like you wrote in one of your articles, they had people from the HSI, not the Secret Service, right? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so that originally came out, I think, in the immediate days, or maybe just 10 days after the shooting. I think this is again coming from Hawley's office, where a Secret Service whistleblower said that, hey, these aren't actually agents that are experts in securing physical sites and event locations. These were basically just mostly DHS agents who were assigned to Trump. And I've heard that repeated a couple times since that initial disclosure was made. But at the congressional hearing last week, the acting director, Ronald Rowe, who replaced Kimberly Cheadle, he did provide a pretty detailed breakdown. And he said, I think most of them were actual Secret Service agents, according to Rowe. Rowe could be lying. I mean, he has lied. He's a liar. But again, it's really hard to tell exactly what's going on.
And when you call him a liar, what specifically was he deceptive about?
Oh man, now you're putting me on the spot. It's hard to.
I think they both lied. I think Cheadle and Rowe are both deceptive. I think they're both engaged in, and you can see this right here. Ray used fake evidence, whether intentionally or negligently, used evidence from a Discord server, right?
Yeah. So Christopher, that's a whole nother bizarre story about the FBI initially told Congress that Crooks previewed his shooting on a Steam account, which is like a gaming chat platform, but it turned out that was like a total fake account. And for some reason, the FBI was confused. And that made it all the way to the director, who then told Congress, and then Congress tells the media, and it gets widely reported by even like the New York Times that Crooks has a Steam account, and then they walk that back and say, hey, no, actually it was fake. So it almost makes you wonder if the FBI was leaking fake evidence on purpose to demoralize people, make it hard for the public to even know what's going on, and to kind of just muddy the waters. I think that's my guess. Or again, it could be incompetence, and for some reason a FBI analyst thought this was a fake account, and it got up to Ray, and Ray never vetted it, and then it got made national news. So it's really hard to tell if it's incompetence or purposeful misinformation. And I'm reading through my articles. I know I caught Roe red-handed in a lie, but I just can't find it.
Let me see if I can find it.
Okay.
But it is a kind of a technique and a tactic that's used by a lot of these politicians and parties to knowingly put out false information to get it into the media, particularly the left, because so many people, I think, on the left are in the corporate media. It's to get that false information out, even though if they know it's wrong or anything. Mm-hmm. They just promote it and bullhorn it. So that's the FBI may be involved in that, that kind of thing. But it is interesting.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just found what I caught Roe lying about, and that's possibly the biggest question in this whole incident is how the Secret Service counter snipers did not see Crooks 150 yards away on the rooftop before he began firing. When all the locals knew about Crooks, they knew he was on the rooftop at least 3 minutes before he started shooting. And it was pretty much all hands on deck. The locals were panicking. They had that building surrounded. They were looking for Crooks. There was a lot of radio chatter. Where is this guy? The question is how that information, did it get to the Secret Service? How did it not get to the Secret Service? Ronald Rowe, the acting director, claims that his agents never knew Crooks was on the rooftop until he started firing. But evidence has come out showing that the Secret Service was actually looking at the roof while the locals were searching for Crooks. And a witness who was there, I found an interview where he's saying, we could see the Secret Service looking, trying to scope out the roof. But that not only does that implicate Rowe in a lie where he says the Secret Service didn't know about Crooks, but it also raises the question is how did the Secret Service counter snipers not stop Crooks before he started firing? And one of the biggest things that hasn't been emphasized yet is the fact that the Secret Service not only let Crooks shoot first, but they waited 15 seconds before returning fire. It was actually a local cop who initially hit Crooks and stopped him after he allegedly fired 8 shots.
Wow. So it's a local cop who did the shot. Do you know where that local cop was? Because in the front shots, we can see the sniper up to Trump's right? Mm-hmm. Kind of facing towards where Crooks was, or where his body was found. Do you know where the local cop was who shot Crooks?
Yeah, so the cameras are pointing at Trump, and you could see this, like you said, the Secret Service snipers are kind of on the barns behind him. And from what I can tell, and from my understanding and my reading of the after-action reports from Beaver County and some information from Butler, there was a QRF, a quick reaction force of local SWAT team guys that were by that barn below the Secret Service snipers. And when the locals surrounding the Crooks rooftop are in a panic, that QRF gets deployed to the fence to Trump's right. So, there was the building where Crooks used as a perch. About 50 yards in front of that was a fence. And then maybe another 75 to 100 yards, you have Trump. So the QRF gets sent to that fence area. And so they're directly facing the rooftop where Crooks allegedly fired from. And after Crooks got 8 shots off, one of the SWAT guys from the ground hit Crooks. That's my understanding of what happened, or that's at least the account that's being told by a lot of the local law enforcement. And I think that comes actually directly from Butler County DA. That's the source of that info.
Wow. So that's it. That's incredible. So the Secret Service aren't the ones who who shot.
Yeah, it's almost like they put the kill shot in 10. So the local cop, after 8 shots in like 5 seconds, the local cop returned fire and hit Crooks, and then it was 10 more seconds. And if we paused right now for 10 seconds, it would get super awkward. Like, that's kind of a long time. And then the Secret Service fired that final kill shot. And it's almost like you got to raise the question, like, well, they want to make sure Crooks was dead for sure so he couldn't talk.
Wow, yeah. No, that's a good point. Because if you listen to those shots, there's 3, there's 5, there may be one overlapping, and then 15 seconds later, there's one more shot. So that final shot is it. Wow.
You got it.
Incredible. There's just so many problems with this. And you mentioned Josh Hawley. So all these guys are traveling out there, senators. There's a couple guys who are ex-snipers, actually, who are now members of Congress, have traveled out to Butler. But you wrote that they didn't want Hawley to, Hawley's written some very interesting stuff, but they tried to kick him off the Butler site, right? That was a liberal senator.
Yeah, I think that might have been 2 days after the shooting. He tried to get on the site. They told him to leave. I think he actually eventually did get on the site. He kind of asserted his authority, which is good for him. I mean, him and Chuck Grassley have done, and Ron Johnson have done probably the most, or at least they put the most information from direct primary sources out there. So, say what you want about those guys, but it seems like they're at least taking their oversight duties pretty seriously now. I wish I could say the same for the House. The House is usually a bit better on this, but it seems like Mike Johnson is almost suppressing what could be a proper investigation. I mean, he formed a task force of 13 members. 6 of them are Democrats. 7 out of the 7 Republicans, a couple are rhinos, and he left off Eli Crane, who was the Navy SEAL sniper. And it's like, how do you leave the most competent guy off the task force? I mean, that raises a lot of questions again. And to top it off, their report, which was commissioned by Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House, isn't due until December 13th, which is after the election.
Right.
So just, another, like, almost everything I read about this case just really makes my jaw drop. It's everything speaks to a cover-up.
It's really incredible. And Hawley wrote in one of his missives, I think it was to Mayorkas, that they hung up on him. He just said, we're not answering questions. Click. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And actually, you were the one that reported that first, so I'll give you credit for that. I read his letter, but I glazed over that until I saw you tweet about that. And that's just the kind of attitude the feds are showing to Congress. And we haven't gotten any actual documents or physical evidence from the feds. I know they sent the FBI deputy director and the Secret Service, the former director and the acting director, have all testified, but they haven't provided any, surveillance footage, comms, anything like that, any FBI documents, any interview reports. All of the primary documentation we have is coming from Butler County and Beaver County.
It's incredible. So they're not divulging. And I think Cheadle said, we lost the communications. That's the super suspicious. So that evidence is gone too. Wow.
Yeah, they never recorded the radio comms in the first place. And it was like a bizarre explanation that, hey, if we do events close to DC, we kind of have the physical equipment to be able to record our comms. I didn't really understand what she was trying to, or maybe it was Roe that was trying to explain this, but they don't want recording their communications if they're stationed in a Saudi Arabian embassy or something like that. Again, it doesn't really make sense to me because they're still communicating over the radio. So what difference does it make for security purposes if they're recording it or not? It begs more questions.
Just tons of questions. And Johnson, like you said, he's actually put out timelines and things of what happened. So you can go to Senator Johnson's website and just download all the data that he's accumulated. But you wrote, I think in one of your things, is the DHS, I think Lauren Boebert, you retweeted one or reposted one of her tweets, Homeland Security has stepped in, superseded all communications with the Oversight Committee, and has refused to confirm a briefing will occur. Incredible.
Yeah, that happened immediately after the shooting. And, I guess the Secret Service director did testify eventually, so they weren't able to block it. But it's my understanding that Mayorkas, the DHS head, did block Cheadle from also testifying to Homeland Security the very next day. I mean, she resigned before she even would have been able to do so. I don't know what the significance is of them allowing her to talk to oversight, but not Homeland Security. Maybe Homeland Security would have been more competent staffers to make sure she was asked the right questions. But yeah, something's going on. There's definitely tension between the DHS and its supposed overseers at Homeland Security Committee.
It's incredible. And you've kind of tied this event back into these other strange events. You also posted, like, the CIA said the Crooks is not an MK Ultra victim, like, but he's part of this kind of fairly recent strain of kind of mass shooters or people with strange backgrounds online on Discord or something. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I heard that he had a Discord account, that made a lot of red flags go up in my own mind. I immediately assumed, or had to at least ask the question of whether this kid was groomed, because we have many, many cases of people being groomed on gaming chat rooms such as Discord, or it's not a gaming chat room, but Telegram, chat apps like these. The most notorious case of this in my mind is the Buffalo shooting, where Peyton Gendron was in communications with a, quote, retired Fed in his Discord chat room, like the same day, shortly before he went to the Tops Market in Buffalo to, do a shooting spree. And now I don't have many other smoking gun examples like that, but I do note that last year, the FBI, after the so-called Discord leaker from the Pentagon, Jack Teixeira, he was like the 20-year-old National Guardsman who leaked a bunch of classified records on Discord. After that, the FBI and the Pentagon devoted a lot more resources to making sure they were partners with Discord, quote unquote partners, and that they had like undercover employees and informants infiltrating those chat rooms under the guise of preventing more national security leaks. So that, to me, is more evidence that they might have been monitoring, or even somebody might have been grooming crooks. I mean, there was the reporter Lee Fang interviewed an Israeli security contractor who said that we hang out on platforms like Discord, and we try to get these extremists as young as we can, like 13 or 14 years old is when we start targeting them, because that's the age when they say the most careless and stupid things out loud on the internet. Why is that significant? Along with the fact that, an intelligence contractor admitting they do that, well, we also have the fact that Crooks did allegedly threaten a school shooting and a bombing when he was 15. I've seen conflicting reports that no, Crooks was actually warning about a school shooting, and he was a patsy. I don't know about that, but I do know that he's connected to rumors of a school shooting and a bombing at 15. And I think that might, if he indeed was groomed, that might be when he was first put on the Fed's radar, if that's true.
Right. So he has that in. You wrote in one of your articles, the federal government, or the FBI, and specifically, is sending resources onto these things, right, with the ostensible purpose of preventing stuff. But
yeah, there was a GAO report that came out this year that actually specifically said the FBI is seeking to have a closer relationship with Discord and other gaming platforms, because this is the new frontier. It's not typical social media like Facebook. It's these gaming platforms that the kids are on these days.
Right, and it's incredible. And how did the people explain how this guy from kind of middle or north from Pittsburgh has 3 encrypted phones with connections internationally. How that doesn't seem to be like a normal,
I will
shoot.
say to that, they said 3 encrypted accounts. So maybe, I mean, if you had a Proton Mail, the servers are based in Switzerland, that would be like an example. So I'd like to know the nature of these encrypted accounts. They could have just been, like I said, yes, Signal. I think Telegram's over, the servers are overseas, all that. It could have been something as innocuous as that. And I think the FBI is trying to say, oh, encrypted accounts, because they hate encryption and they want Congress to ban end-to-end encryption. And that could be another psyop. Again, it's really hard to figure out what's going on. I will add, though, that the FBI initially, I think the day of the shooting, said, we believe he acted alone. Christopher Wray in Congress, he said, oh, Crooks was a loner. We don't have much evidence of him communicating, not even digitally. He wasn't in touch with anybody. And later in the same hearing, he says, oh, he had 3 encrypted accounts and we haven't broken them. So they probably do know he was in touch with a lot of other people.
Yeah, and you wrote in one of your articles, is July 27, somebody did this geolocation data, right? Heritage Foundation oversight project. I think this is the same thing they did to do 2,000 Mules, right? To show the ballot fraud. But they said somebody connected to DC was somewhere around Crooks, right?
Yeah, they have a cell phone traveling from Crooks's home to DC within a couple hundred yards of an FBI office. Again, the significance of that is unclear. There's probably phones that have gone from my house to DC close to an FBI office. That doesn't really mean anything. A lot of people go from their house to DC, which puts them within the vicinity of an FBI office. The interesting thing I think about that, the oversight project, which is part of Heritage Foundation, did the research on that geolocation movement, which should mean that they actually do know who owned those phones. They should be able to figure that out. And I'm wondering why the Heritage Foundation is not putting all its evidence out. I don't trust them either, to be frank.
Right. It's true. I agree. I totally agree with you. You can't trust a lot of these people. It's so much of this stuff is political. And
Yes.
he was in Crooks, we know, was in a BlackRock commercial while he was in high school too, right? Can you talk about that?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's just another really bizarre rabbit hole. He was in a commercial. I don't remember the details of this, but yeah, I think it was like within a couple years ago. And I guess people are speculating that might have also put him on certain people's radar. Maybe they said, hey, you're certain people connected to BlackRock said, hey, you're a star. You're going places. But again, that's total speculation about how Crooks might have been groomed. I will say, to Senator Hawley's credit, rather than dismissing that as some crazy thread that can't possibly be useful to my investigation, Hawley has written to BlackRock demanding all records they have on Crooks. And I think that, a lot of congressmen would say, hey, that's too crazy for me to take seriously. But I think any little information we can get about Crooks, even if it's very tenuous or apparently tenuous, it could end up being very useful in the future.
Yeah, no, it's incredible that all there's just so many strange connections and everything. And this is the guy who was you did an article about this guy who was you mentioned his name. He was the sniper, right, in Congress, Eli Crane. So a lot of these people are going to the site to check things out, right? Like traveling out there.
That's right. And again, I gotta wonder if Eli Crane is specifically left off the committee, because he's made some of the most bold statements in Congress. He said, by the fact that they didn't have anybody on the water tower says to him that kind of validates conspiracies, that they purposely wanted Trump killed. He said that to Kimberly Cheadle, I think it was, or maybe it was Christopher Wray, within, I think, the second week after the shooting. And I applaud him for a remark like that. I think Americans should be asking that question, but I also think it might have burned him with Mike Johnson.
Right. Yeah. No, it's something else. And there's kind of like you've reported on other Secret Service failures, right? So this isn't just kind of an anomaly that happened once out. I mean, it was, I think the last shooting, non-successful assassination was Reagan in 1981. So this is like a 40-year span of preventing people getting shot. But there were other things around Mar-a-Lago too, right? Like people getting in with through Secret Service past the Secret Service. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that's right. And then it actually comes out from a reporter called Jason Leopold. He's kind of this big FOIA whiz, and he got records about the Secret Service's failures at Mar-a-Lago, I think a couple days before the shooting happened. So it was really good timing, and it was an interesting report from him. And I looked at his records, and yeah, sure enough, those cases over the last several years where people would go to Mar-a-Lago representing that, like, hey, I've got documents to give to Trump or something like that. And they actually made it past Secret Service checkpoints before Mar-a-Lago private security would stop them and turn them away. Now, there were a couple times where it was actually the Mar-a-Lago security who were at fault. I think there was one case where some like teenager with a big Snapchat account snuck on to Mar-a-Lago and started posting, hey, this is so easy. Trump's here. It's like taking candy from a baby. And then once they saw those social media posts, then they really realized they messed up. So he made it through Secret Service and private security. So I think these are more like smaller issues of incompetence, but it gives you a little look at a wider problem. And the problem seems to be still persisting because just last week, somebody was arrested for trespassing on Mar-a-Lago recently in the last couple of weeks. And according to a local officer's arrest affidavit, this guy who was arrested last week made it past Secret Service checkpoints before being stopped by Mar-a-Lago security. So it really makes you wonder, like, have they made any changes, any reforms? It doesn't seem like it.
It's really incredible. And it's so strange, too, that the shooting took place while Jill Biden was in Pittsburgh, 40 miles away. And then also Kamala Harris was in Philadelphia. So all these three people are in, I mean, it's a battleground state, but it is strange that this huge event takes place and these guys are there and there's all kinds of disputes about resources going to certain places and things like that. And did Trump get the second stringers or fourth stringers or something like that? I mean, some of those women didn't look like they belonged there. But
yeah, and the lead site agent, this came out yesterday from Josh Hawley again. Apparently, the Secret Service agent in charge of securing the Butler rally was very inexperienced. It was a female, for whatever that's worth. Her colleagues really don't like her. They said she didn't know anything about securing a site, but for some reason she was the one in charge. I've also heard the snipers were, G-leaguers, so to speak. And I think people say that based off of an analysis of their firearms. They say it's like they had some bolt-action 308s, and the A-team Secret Service snipers have semi-autos. And so they think, these guys were given bolt-action guns, which is another kind of thing that might have impeded their response. But again, 15 seconds still.
Yeah, no, it's just strange occurrence on strange occurrence on strange occurrence. It really is something else. And we just still don't know his motive. So Crooks is really kind of an enigma. Like there's like weird things about him. You said he was supporting a far left group, right? But also, wasn't he a registered Republican? Is that true?
Yeah, he was a registered Republican in Pennsylvania. That could have been, you register as a Republican, vote in the primaries, and like you vote for the weakest candidate to kind of mess with the GOP. That could have been what was going on. He also donated to Act Blue, which is a far left, PAC or something. I don't know much about political finance, but that's the news coming out about Crooks's political donations. And then there's also conflicting reports about his social media activity. The FBI director or deputy director, and this was a dirty, dirty move in my mind, went out to Congress in his opening statement, said, hey, we found an account associated with Crooks that was made over 700 posts that were either anti-immigrant or anti-Semitic. Oh, by the way, we haven't confirmed that it actually is Crooks's account, but we just want to let you know for the sake of transparency. And that everybody that listens to your show knows that that's just them putting out info because they know it's going to make headlines. There's also the CEO of Gab put out a tweet saying, well, hey, I got a request from the FBI for an account that might be linked to Crooks that was posting pro-Biden stuff. That account has also not been confirmed to be Crooks's or even associated with Crooks. So we really don't know what's going on here. I guess the one interesting thing was if he really did have an account making anti-Semitic remarks, that to me is more evidence that he was probably on a forum with feds because, anti-Semitic chat rooms almost, in my experience, almost always have glowies in them. That's where the action is for the glowies.
Right. And a lot of guys from like Antifa are in there too. So they would, if he was really far right, they get records on these guys too. Like, I mean, when I did my research into the Order of Nine Angles, a lot of these guys had already done a lot of the work. Like they knew the people and their posts, and it was on, was it Unicorn,
Right.
Neon Unicorn or something like that.
Yeah.
Like the forums. So why doesn't he have a record of that? If he's really an anti-Semite or a far right person, anti-immigrant, really nasty, if he's of the nastier stripe, there probably would have been some record of his post, maybe not tied directly obviously to his name, but just something out there.
Yeah.
But I think
go ahead. I
was just going to say, I think that it was a dig on Torba and his site. So it was Gab, so you can tag him with the Jew hatred and racism that, there's Gab is it used to be different. Like he turned it into a very Christian kind of place, but you can still be pretty nasty on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of questions, but I think all your work, kudos to you, because this is an excellent resource for people to see how the investigation is unfolding, so people can check out your 40 articles. I mean, I wanted to just touch base with you on something that's not really on the kind of topic, but what's the story with the pipe bomb on January 6th and its connection to Kamala Harris? Can you talk about that?
Well, this is another Secret Service security failure, and I was actually going to mention it, but then we kind of veered off into the Mar-a-Lago failures. So the DHS Inspector General, the Republicans really like this guy. I'm not saying that makes him good or trustworthy at all, but he seems to be more of a Trump-friendly Inspector General. Finally put out a report on the Secret Service's January 6th failures. A lot of people are talking about the Secret Service deleting text messages in the wake of January 6th. That's a big scandal in its own right. But what I wrote about a couple days ago was them. We now have proof that they swept the DNC with canines to try to find potential explosives. I used 2 teams in the morning of January 6th, probably 10 hours after somebody left a pipe bomb outside of the building, but somehow those bomb-sniffing dogs didn't detect the pipe bomb, and then Kamala Harris gets sent from, I think, the Capitol to the DNC on January 6th at 11:25 a.m. She's there for a couple hours, and then the pipe bomb is discovered at 1:05 p.m., which is right when a lot of the violence at the Capitol is kicking into high gear. So they finally discover it after almost, 18 hours. And then Kamala leaves, and I think she went home after that. But that raises a lot of questions, like why didn't the Secret Service bomb-sniffing dogs spot the pipe bomb? Why was Kamala sent to the DNC in the first place? That's a real big question. And maybe the biggest question is, why isn't she talking about this? I mean, this should be a big talking point of her campaign, is like the biggest terroristic activity from January 6th, a potential bombing. I was within 20 feet of that. I'd be talking about that every day. The fact that she's not talking about it suggests to me that there's something deeper going on here, and this could have been a hoax for sure. It could have been a Fed planting the bomb, or I don't know exactly what, but there's more that we need to know about the pipe bomb investigation for sure.
Right. No, it's very odd. And it was it was by like the carport of the DNC, right? It was close to like a couple police officers. Like there's video of it of people walking around it.
Yeah.
Something doesn't go off. Something's fishy about that too. Like these are all just really strange events that don't have a lot of clarity. Why could they find all these guys who went through, the Capitol, but they can't find this bomber too? Right?
Oh, I did a story a couple months ago about a guy who threw a pipe bomb at a satanic temple in Massachusetts, and the guy lives in like Idaho or something, and they were able to find a single hair fiber and track all of his whole car ride from Massachusetts back out to the West. And they were able to do that, but you're telling me that they can't find the pipe bomber? I mean, I broke a story last month about them having FBI records show they had a suspect by January 10th. There's been a so-called whistleblower from the FBI saying that they tracked his Metro card. It was linked to some master sergeant in the Air Force, but then the people on the 7th floor kind of scuttled the investigation. Again, really, really bizarre stuff, almost on par with the security failures at Butler. But these are, two of the big smoking guns that really, really should have people going to jail if we had a functioning country.
Yeah, no, it's really something else. Like these are incredible. And what's really strange about like one of the comments you made earlier is like how the people who are supposed to protect us have not put forward just like evidentiary things, just like this is the evidence. I think the FBI put together a 2-page thing and put it out like on their rolling investigation, but no like conclusory stuff. Like it's so de minimis or whatever. It's just like, what's going on? Like and actually Cheadle too in that when she was in front of Congress, she's like, oh, gotta wait for the FBI investigation. Oh, we don't have that yet. Like this is a monumental event. Like why don't you have some of this information? It's just such classic DC obfuscation and like being slow rolling all this stuff.
Yeah, and everybody knows like there's so many former FBI agents and Secret Service agents who have the freedom to speak and saying, hey, government silence is the reason so many conspiracies are proliferating. And I guess the government's fine with that, which to me that raises questions about who was complicit in this assassination attempt. I mean, the fact that they're not putting any information that could be debunked, they're just letting people put out their own theories. I think they're perfectly happy with that because as long as there's not one central narrative that everybody can attack, everybody's kind of just going off on their own research projects. That kind of fractious methodology for trying to find out the truth, I think, works to the FBI's advantage.
And wasn't it odd? There was like some hint that like Iran was behind this whole thing, or they were trying to blame Iran. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I can. Because the interesting thing about that is, for one, I think that's the FBI trying to appease the GOP, give them some red meat to chew on because, a lot of the GOP wants war with Iran. So they're more than happy to run with this, even though it's absurd on its face. I mean, I think it was Lindsey Graham even said during a congressional hearing that, yeah, I'm not really implying that Iran hired crooks to shoot at Trump. Like, no, not even the most bold-faced Iran hawks would make that argument. But it's still interesting that it's become a talking point. And I could tell you with almost 100% certainty that it's entirely BS. I believe that it's related to a so-called plan to assassinate John Bolton that was foiled, quote unquote, by the FBI 2 years ago. They indicted some low-level guy in the Iranian army who was talking in chat rooms and tried to hire an FBI informant
Wow.
to kill John Bolton. And this is like the devil was in the details. Nobody reported on this really until last year when I was looking at some of the court records. I'm like, wait, an Iranian guy was talking to the FBI, and that's what they based their indictment on. The guy is still in Iran, so even though he's indicted, he's never going to go to jail. It's like the FBI or the DOJ just put out an indictment as kind of a press release and for propaganda purposes. And I'd be willing to bet just about anything that same glow up in the chat rooms is what they used to justify their so-called intelligence assessment that there was a threat against Trump. It was probably some Iranian like private in their military who was talking to an FBI agent.
Wow, yeah. Crazy. And this whole January 13th attempt, it didn't happen in a vacuum. There's so many strange things. CrowdStrike happened like 3 or 4 days later, right? So everything shuts down. Then Biden, drops out of the presidential race, and Kamala becomes the front runner without a vote, I guess. They just anointed her or something. It's just like the craziest month was July, wasn't it?
And I think that's where we can get into a little speculation. Well, it's fun, and I'm not saying this in my capacity as a reporter, but you got to wonder, man. It was 2 days before the RNC, the Republican convention was supposed to start. I mean, if Trump dies and if the plot goes the way it was supposed to go, the country would be in chaos, and you could have presidential candidate Nikki Haley running against Kamala and like Josh Shapiro or something like that. And the full plot, I believe, was supposed to cause a lot more chaos. I mean, remember, Crooks supposedly had explosives in his vehicle, and the vehicle was on the other side of the event site, from what I've heard in congressional hearings. So the theory is, if we're going to believe that Crooks was a genuine assassin, was that he shoots Trump, kills him with one shot, reaches into his pocket and detonates the explosives on the other side of the site. That creates a lot more pandemonium and either allows him to escape or maybe kill 10, 15 more people, because now everybody's in a panic. That might be total BS put out by the government, but I think it's at least something to think about. And then if that were to happen, who knows? Maybe there's some right-wing retaliations. Maybe we see a bunch of Whitmer plots or Oklahoma City type sting operations to distract us from the Trump death. And now the Trump death doesn't get investigated. Instead, we've got this problem with, the right-wing retaliation. And now, there's no civil war because the right wing is not even organized. There's just some scattered violence promoted by the FBI. And now we have a total crackdown on our civil liberties. That's just a scenario I've been kind of tossing around in my own mind when I think about this.
It's totally plausible. And Ray even said that there could be retaliatory strikes from terroristic things, and they're categorizing Crooks as a domestic terrorist.
Yeah.
But other people could have done it in response to the attempt on Trump, which makes me think they were thinking on lines you just spoke about, which is retaliatory when he gets shot. So there's a lot of premonition type things about Trump getting shot. There was the statement, like, we've got Biden, or whoever's operating Biden, said we've got Trump in our sights 5 days before that. Murder ghoul Victoria Nuland says, I don't think Trump will ever be president the day of the shooting. Before it, when the shooting happens, like, the media should have just stopped and said Trump was shot, but the national corporate media almost in lockstep ignored everything because it seemed like there wasn't a natural response to the event. Because really on Twitter, like, people are like, hey, this guy, the bullet just bounced off Trump's head. But they should have just broken to the news and said, hey, somebody. And then even in the press media, they're like, well, there were loud noises heard. Something happened at the Trump thing, or they were obfuscating. So those additional layers of high strangeness around this event. And what you mentioned, you make that great comment about the RNC 2 days away. Once he becomes the nomination, Trump starts getting intel too. So he's back to getting intel drops as well. So Crooks was really smart, on point at the right moment to be the guy there to take a shot at Trump. to keep from this happen, like to make sure, like you said, it would have been mass chaos. So now Trump anoints J.D. Vance as his vice president. So if he does die, Vance will probably get the nomination, I would assume. So yeah, it was a really like a crucial kind of nexus point for that assassination to occur. It's incredible that Crooks chose that time too.
Yeah, and then it's even more incredible that all the stars aligned for him to be able to get on the roof and fire 8 times on the, like you said, the crucial nexus point. That's just, it's too much to really.
It's incredible. And he's walking around. He's got a finder. There's video of him. A cop's following him around before the shooting. Like, people are saying if they would have saw him, they would have cuffed him and, done something. But he's like tooling around, acting suspicious. I mean, it's so strange. Everything is so strange.
Yeah. And the last, I know we're probably wrapping up shortly, but the last major security failure I'll highlight, since you kind of just referenced it, is there were supposed to be local snipers on the 2nd floor. They had a window where they could have seen Crooks right beneath them about to fire at Trump. And those snipers left their post supposedly to go look for Crooks, which is just another added, like, what are the chances, 1 in a million, that the snipers who would have been able to see Crooks before he shot, like right 20 feet away, you could hit him with a handgun, those guys left their posts? I mean, geez, it's too much to be able to believe with credulity.
I mean, and then I saw a video too, I think it was posted by Crowdsource the Truth, of guys inside that building, and they come walking out and they're so casual, like this huge event takes place. You can see the kind of natural kind of body language of the guys who are panicking, running around. Mm-hmm. These 2 guys just walk out like nothing really happened. They almost killed the front runner presidential, candidate, former president. And they're like, doop, 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 doop. Hey, what are you guys doing? And that's just another, like, I would be, something's wrong.
And one of those guys inside the building was a Secret Service agent. I will say that body cam footage is from 6:30 p.m., so a lot could have happened between 6:11 and 6:30. Maybe they were clearing inside the building and they weren't there the whole time. Although, again, Kimberly Cheadle, in her interview with ABC, the infamous slanted roof, she said because the roof was slanted, we decided to secure the building from the inside. Now, is she referencing those Beaver County snipers who left their post? Or was she saying that the Secret Service actually secured the building from inside? That would be a big point towards the guys who think that there might have been a shooter from inside the building. If Secret Service was there the whole time and that hasn't been really disclosed yet, it would be pretty interesting.
It's an incredible admission by her, right? If they found that evidence, we were talking, I think, in the pre-show about the so-called window shot, or the report that came out. And there was a guy, I think it was, he was talking to Tommy's podcast, who said that there were silenced rounds. Like, I know the sound of a silenced round that may not have been picked up in those original 8 shots. So there's a lot more stuff going. But a great job on keeping the record. And it's an excellent record on Headline USA of all the research going on, and other stuff like we've talked about. You were doing stuff on the satanic, pedophile guys are still around. So you're not just covering, the Trump attempted assassination. You're covering a bunch of other topics, but you put out some great work on this. 40 articles. People can check that out. So is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed before we wrap it up?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it all at this point. I really appreciate you having me on because, I've been trying to really latch onto this story like a pit bull and not let go. So maybe in a couple months, I'll have a lot more information to share.
Yeah, let's do it again. In a couple months. All right,
thanks so much.
Stay there. But Headline USA, the journalist name, Ken Silva, Silva, and I will put your Twitter, because you post a lot on Twitter, at JD Cashless _cashless, JD _cashless. So Ken Silva, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks again.
All right, stay there.